Sean, is man
Has there ever been a time in your life when you have seen one of these objects at a powwow or at a park or someplace, saying to yourself, the group in which you were with, boy, I'd sure like to have one of these. I wonder what I'll attempt to do here is to give you some inside enlightenment of the different aspects of teepee. We're all craftsmen in a sense, in our own ways. Some of us do things different than others. This will be totally my idea of a construction of a teepee and how one would go about consuming the materials necessary to start one from scratch, accumulating extras, the parts, and the habitat of the teepee. I make this film strictly for use for those who are seeking and looking for ways to try to improve outdoor camping in their own aspect. Maybe some of these will help them. Then again, may give them ideas to how to change it from what I already have come up with. The teepee, being 9,000 or so years old, has got quite a history about it. This little object we see is a replica of an 18-footer. When drawn out, one needs to know the dimensions of the different pieces, the construction, the material necessary to outfit the extras that are not seen just in the material alone. What we'll do, we'll have several little breakaways, and we'll subject the matter in different categories. By no means is this video with the idea of professionalism to be offered. It's only an aid for you to use to make or construct your own teepee. What I've done here is made a drawing of a teepee in its laid out flat condition. This is the way it would appear if you had it out on the ground and all together. The idea of this sheet is to give you some place to put the dimensions, the measurements of those different places that will be a question later, like where your pinholes for the bottom of the doorway, for the lacing pins, for the inside flap tie, for your smoke flap, pockets, lift pole tab, dimensions between that you will follow from different fabrics. Fabrics come in different widths as far as in the roll, and we'll find that some of them are exactly 36 inches. Some we'll find that 42. There's different varieties of canvases that fall in between this. The dimensions that will go in here can be arrived from several magazines or from the library, where you can pick up on some teepee books or lodge books. Dimensions that I'd found in one case where they had a lodge that was upright into a field, and they had someone standing beside of it, and I estimated his height and therefore worked out the dimensions from the individual. Now, these would be right hard to do for your real fine dimensions. But these give you an idea sometime that you can see things and work them back, so everything is totally not impossible. Another would be maybe to borrow from another teepee, the dimensions. The one we have in mind to construct before the camera is a 16-footer under a marine sailcloth designed for making sails for boats. We've never made one from this, so we decided, well, this may be something that'd be light, easy to move, and could be used by the ladies of our group. Other parts of the lodge is what we call a deep cloth. Scribbled out here on a piece of paper is the different sections which will make the interior. This is the ground level, and this ties to the poles on the interior. This is our door, and where it attaches to our door pins. And we notice that we have a 4, a 5, and a 6 section piece. Usually customarily, this is to not only to fit together in a sequence, but it helps us identify quite swiftly when we get ready to put up the teepee what section we have at hand and where it goes in reference to the inside of the lodge. As we mentioned earlier, on the outside, the dimensions of this usually is custom in my case, but I will give you the definitions and the dimensions of this from my measurements as we go along. This will be done when we get ready to go into the teepee and measure between and make this custom fit. Another helpful drawing is the upper part of the lodge where our lift pole will attach the reinforced construction that will be made there, the added gusset, our smoke flap and the pole tab that will hold that out, our ties. This is construction layout that I've done in sort of somewhat detail on that one. And if you're not using a way to stake down the outer edges of the skirt of the teepee, you may want to use sew-on tabs. In my case, I use sew-on tabs, and contrary to some other teepee manufacturers and makers which do not apply hem or use these tabs. This is choice by you, only a suggestion on my behalf that if you're putting up the teepee, the marbles do have a tendency to work through. But if you're going to go by old customs, you would want to keep it pretty close to original as possible at this point. As you may gather by now, drawings are quite serious at this point. I have here already one that I've marked up. Due to the professionalism of the camera, we won't be able to see in great detail the sharpness of these measurements. But the point that I want to make is that you now have a pattern and you have laid out these things, or these are the necessary things that must be done before we can start. I thought, well, I'd share a few of these that have already now been measured, layout. We'll go through and convey these as we go. Our other drawings now have worked into many dimensions and many aspects, looking at the different points that we want to concentrate on.
let's step through a few things that we must need. We need a tie rope, approximately 7-8 feet, hemp or nylon in either case, one of those. We're going to need rope. We need rope for binding and tying at the top, about 75 feet, either hemp or nylon. Around the inside for the dew cloth, going to need about 75 feet, 100 feet. Pieces left over from this, from according on the type of lodge, the size, whether or not that you are to have any excess. But nevertheless, this can be accumulated as needed, but you do need rope and more rope. If you're going to use the stop method, you of course want to tie the marbles. You're going to need the small sash cord, so you need about 50 or 100 feet cording, like I say, on the size of the lodge. Whether you to choose between square stakes or round stakes, these are made out of oak, turned down to diameters. We found that using broomsticks will suffice, but it's not as well as using something that has a straight grain and heavy, as the oak stakes are made of floor oak. Of course, one needs something to place these in the ground, and a small hand mallet made of a good, hard, sturdy wood is better than driving them in with a hatchet or a hammer. One may reinforce the top of the stakes with a metal ring. These are some that have been used many times, and you'll find that they'll fry on you. Another is, you may see here a metal object laying to one side. It's what I call my tent wrench, or teepee wrench, according to the occasion in which you're using it. This is a metal or a fabricated from aluminum, something light, because occasionally you'll have shrinkage, or you'll have a place where you need to pull down, and over a period of time till you can get to the stub and allow you to put it down as you properly call for. Occasionally we have a visitor, one of feminine, that will briefly run under the camera. Here we have the wooden type. These are okay in a sense, where one wants to use all natural and non-metallic, man-made. Can whittle them out of blocks of wood and use leather strap or thongs. Real important to have is our pegs that go underneath the dew cloth to keep it from the rain running down the teepee pole into your face. So we'll need 2 of those for each pole to lace our lodge up. We need pegs or pins made from dowel rods or limbs. The choice of woods there is something that's capable of taking the weather and pinch problem we have, and does not break easily. The dowel rods work very well. To end up on the end of our bag that we want to put all of this together is, of course, we're going to need some way to haul what we've got, and to meet with the certain law enforcement groups. We need a tail light. So we make up a tail light, which is another, and of course we need a bag to put all these articles in and transport them from one point to the other. This can be either constructed of canvas or something that you may feel that would meet your needs, a duffel bag or anything else, a box. Well, I'll need to venture into the woods and make quite a selection from a line of timber, which I have stacked up here. These are 25-foot lodge poles. This particular variety here is a poplar, and when these are mounted on the vehicle, you will find that you're not only grown in length somewhat, but in the front and the back, that you've taken on a little additional roof weight. So great care must be taken in, of course, your poles to the supporting end of it, and to select good straight timber that will dry up, cut at the right time, and placed aside on racks, which I will take you to my rack drying area where I skin them out and prepare them for to become lodge poles. This is a little scaffold that I've sort of made up that would work for placing the poles on for working. I can strap them on this and turn them and shave them or sand them, treat them and store them. So another thought we have to keep in mind: where are we going to keep all these items that we're accumulating? If you happen to be a nice handyman and can draw together pieces of steel and you want yours made of metal, there's the old wrought iron pipe version. This works very well, and this seconds as a place to throw wood for working your chainsaw, of course, doing the fall wood. In the rough, we find our lodge pole pines. These are from out in the upper part of Colorado, brought in. These are in the unskinned, unfinished conditions, which leaves a lot to be done here. It takes approximately an hour to do a pole with a draw knife. These are ranging somewhere this side of 26 to 27 feet. Yes, it looks right rough, but I just took some poles out of storage, from the winter storage, from this particular rack. This is one of 3 racks that I have, and give you an idea. This is a stack of lodge poles that have managed to work it through the winter. See how the weather plays on the plastics. I found that black plastic seems to work better than some of this clear, and it leaves your poles very rough looking. I bound them in a circular motion, hoping to keep some trueness, of course, without the plastic now on them, which needs to be replaced. One finds that they have a tendency to seek their own direction sometime, and even bound tightly and pulled with a pulling lift or a ratchet type arrangement so that I could pull out the tension. Even then, they even move in the rack and seek their own crookedness. These are poplar, and they're very light when seasoned. These need to be reworked. Let's say they're still in, 2 sets are out of storage. Finding many places to try to store lodge poles when not in use is maybe in your backyard where the basketball goal was once used quite frequent. This seems to be a nice backup area and allows me to be able to pull back here, put my poles on, and drive on down the driveway. These are a set of poles also from the upper part of Colorado, and skinned and finished, similar to the ones we had just reviewed. These have taken on the everyday use, and I've treated them with a waterproof tree to try to preserve them. They averaged about 55 pounds a piece when brought in. Attempt may be for one to want to decorate or to finish the poles a little different. I've done one here as a sample, sort of, where I sort of put a little history, like little story going up the pole. And any way to decorate your lodge or do it the way that you feel it, make it like home, is to more your advantage. I will stress also, in the process of making your lodge, keep in mind, try to keep it as pretty traditional as possible. I know there will be times when you'll put on things that may be to your liking, but make sure that they meet the outdoor code of the native way and does not become offensive to anyone. Our key machine is a heavy-duty make of leather or canvas or upholstery type machine. This is one that I went out to a local garment place and found. Came less table and less motor. They were according on the conditions of where you find them and in what condition they're in. One may find one wholesale. In the process of looking for a machine, I found several and obtained several. So once you get a good deal sometime going, you can pick up more than one machine. Two of them haven't got here, but nevertheless I have one. It's a darning machine, which has just an arm at the bottom of where this one has the table, and you're able to just maneuver your material around, like making eyelets or fixing holes or things like that. This one hasn't been abused too greatly. Does a real good job. Run a teepee through this one. And this will be the machine which we'll use. We've selected a nylon thread. I'll try to elaborate on the end of the tape these things that one needs to purchase or obtain as to type and material, number and quantity, in order for me to group each item. Of course, the table is something I sort of constructed together to roll out into the yard where the cord goes to the house, and I can lay my material out. We'll be working with great lengths of material, and the spool is in a big roll, which we will take a look at next. Fabric. The key important product of our project. This will be the material which we have selected to make the lodge for you at this time out of. This is a type of like a raincoat nylon. Being that I picked it up at a warehouse, a lot of times you have to shop, go around and look at these places that's in your local town, and sort of weigh out the conditions in which you can get it for. Sometimes you get it for a good price, and sometimes you get material for whatever it's normally going for, as much as $8 a yard. You'll find across the edge here, a lot of times will be just canvas. Then you'll find some that'll be marked marine shrunk, which is prepared for, let's call it naval use or for sea use. And then you'll also find sometimes with Vivitex, which is a low resistance to mildew. Now, mildew is a real real go-getter for us here on these pieces of material. If you leave them out, some of the lodges will have a tendency to soak up that mildew when you bring it in and store it away. Because a lot of times you don't get to put them up dry. So you have to keep in mind the type of material, and we're hoping that maybe this type of nylon will do the trick for low mildew resistance, even though it's not specified on it. There's different weights of the material. This is super light. Underneath here I have a spool that is graded as being a light canvas, and this is about a 4-foot roll. And what you see here, if I can roll her down, is the roll consists of about 60 yards in this particular. And this is 60 yards in the nylon. So you can see the comparisons of the two, and as far as the diameters, that they don't seem to be equal, but this is about 3 feet wide, which I'll have laid out. And this, like I say, is a lot wider. We need some binding stripping spools. I picked this up at an outlet. Several rolls of that wouldn't be bad. It's good for ties. I have a roll of nylon, the same as this, and a roll of this regular, appears to be a cotton based with a little canvas. It will wrinkle and bind up, but it doesn't ravel. It's another thing to look at. It's something that is quite ravelly. We'd like to point out, in reinforcement, we have what we call here a real heavy canvas. It's, you can hear it's like cardboard. It's got a real thick binding. Won't have any trouble with that. I usually get maybe 8 or 10 yards of this to work out places that may cause you trouble from wear and tear, and reinforce these sections. May be called for in some constructions of teepees and others that don't. What we've done already, we've assembled some of the sections, and we'll just take a moment to look at some of the ideas that we will be using. This is our door panel. The door panel made up of 2 pieces brought together in the center, and so seems that when you sew it, it allows the rain to come down and go over your seam and carry on. You don't want any reversed so that water will collect underneath, and in other words inverted. And places to tie and rolled up. You may or may not, some will find it strange if you use this thing called Velcro. That, I would say, would be the owner's discretion whether or not he would choose to use Velcro in attaching parts to the teepee. I use Velcro, and I find it very useful. And I'm sure in my grandmother's day, the old days, she would have used Velcro also if it was been available. The eyelets for your door to be attached. This is the heavy canvas that we had spoke of earlier, and I chose this because of the wear and tear on it. These are the stitches that we put in by hand. Now, you may choose to put all the stitches in by hand if you choose. I particularly would rather sew where I can and hand sew wherever it may be necessary. In this case, where the pegs go, I feel that I'll do a better job than the machine will. In this door construction, I've added a place for a pole to go through. This would be the top of the lodge. This will hang down like this with a stake through this end and shipped all the way. Preferably not a smooth stick would be best, because if you use something with some snags on it, you will find that it'll stay in there better, because this door gets a lot of use. So therefore you want to reinforce it to take on the day-to-day in and out. What we've done here is laid out the cloth that we'll be using for the front section of our lodge. What I've already done here is put the dimensions, and due to the camera's ability to pick up the small lines and the pencil readings, it'd be easier for me to go ahead and cut this out, and then I'll give the dimensions of the little sections. This gives you an idea what a long piece of cloth it takes from the roll just to do. As we pointed out earlier on our drawing, we have now laid out our cloth, and we're working this section right here up to this point. Now, the dimensions that we have here is that we'll have, like we have over here on our drawing, which we cannot distinguish too well due to the fact that the camera doesn't pick it up, but we have 8.5 inches between the point here, and then we're going to pick up 9 inches from the inside door edge to the outer edge of the cloth. The measurement between width for our ties are 3 inches. We'll work with our smoke flap, which is 15 inches from here to here. The total length that we have achieved is as cut out. This will be one side. This is the where our tie will go. I've marked it off in brown lines, but they may not show up as well. Now what we'll do, we'll take this one side of the teepee, being the door here, the foot. This is one of the smoke flaps. Right in here will be cut down to this point. We'll insert a gusset. But right now what we want to do is take this part right here and fold it over this unused portion right in this section, and we'll make a duplicate side. Then we'll go into our stitching and reinforcement, two fabrics together. As you see now, we've taken the piece that we had lying down this end, and we folded it half in the middle, backed it on itself, folded it down, creased it well. It's a little hard to do sometime on a non-even surface, as grass is not the easiest thing to cut on, but allowing you the room and the space that you need, one can always be super choosy to that effect. Now what we'll do, we'll take this up and we'll run our seams around it, which will be the next step. And before we do that, we'll need to put a few measurements down now so that you can see what this appears to be on paper. What I've attempted to do here is to make a gigantic, more or less, pattern so that we can see our measurements. Right here, from the tip end to this point is 20 inches. The top of our smoke flap is 25 from the tip inside. The contour from this edge right here to the point where it curves back is folded over because these two sheets lay in as they are. So actually this would be 4 inches. There'd be 2 inches right here and 2 inches on the other side. There will be a gusset that will fit in between here, and that gusset that will fit in there will run where we have not cut yet down to right here. This will all be cut, and at this end will be an inch left. What you do, you would cut down and leave a ½ inch to be peeled back on both sides because you have to seam it. And from that point to the upper point here would be 25 inches and 4 inches between the two open ends. So this brings us into our smoke section, which is 65 inches from the top tip to the lower corner, and in the bottom of our smoke flap, which we have, is 16 inches. And actually there'll be another piece that'll be sewed on in this area right here, which will come a little later, but that will be added on. From the edge of our smoke flap down our door, our pin side is 41 inches, and then from the inside door coming down to the bottom of the door we have 38.5 inches. Now this will have to be referenced at some point. In this case, I'll lay the straight edge here to give you an idea of the bow shape that was cut out. What's hard is this angle right here to determine. You just have to figure this as being round and make it from point here to here is 10.5 inches, and you got about 7 inches that come up where I made the turn. That will have to be determined by how you want your opening, but it's 20 inches from right here to right here. Alright, we have 10 inches from this point to this point, which is the bottom of the door flap, and 20 inches from this point to this point here. And we have from the bottom of this point where the tape is all the way up of a nice 13 feet to point at the top where we were earlier. This completes sort of our layout with measurements to be determined about the best as we can. Now, you got to keep in mind that we allow a ½ inch to be folded over and seamed, as we've already done here. As you can see, the underneath piece now will get tucked and folded for a ½ inch and then seamed all the way around. Well, I found that this type of material can be sort of ravelly. It's your choice whether or not that you want to select to hem the bottom half or not. In this case, being the type of material and as stringy as some of it gets, I just assume to have it seamed myself. Let's get on with sewing. What we've already done is gone down the complete back side of the material with a ½ inch seam. And now we've returned back to the doorway, whereby we are now in the process of bringing the hem on around and back up around to the doorway. And this is to give a little idea of our process for which we use to take in our seam work. Some of the seamsters will imagine have been set back in the lab to process it. Different ones of us have for achieving the same thing, but being a self-taught sewing person, this is the only method I know. It's fast and to me gets the job done, and sort of 1 inch at a time, and it seems to come out with the same end results. What I'll do, I'll base this all the way around now, 1/2 inch in the doorway, up the other side, till I'm back to the doorway on the other side, same point, and then we will work out our eyelets, sew up these in stitch, and do our reinforcement in this area, but being that this is the bottom of the door and there's a lot of stepping gets in here, and a couple places on the upper edge, which we'll show here in just a little bit. Well, a few hours have passed now since the earlier section of the tape was started. We've gone almost all the way around with the seam. We're on the home strip now, and we're approaching the door section. We're coming down where the pegged area will be. Now, I might mention at this stage of the game, everyone doesn't have to know how to sew to do this. More self-taught. I have a right foot speed and a left foot speed. If I put my left foot on the pedal under the table here, I find that the machine runs at a different pace. These machines do not sit back and wait on you. They'll move at any speed that you put the pedal down. This one works real well. It's about a 2.5 horsepower motor under this table. So you definitely wouldn't want to get your fingers caught in. We've curled this seam back and about 1/2 inch all the way around. Safety is another thing in working, to make sure that you don't end up being a statistic in the sewing world. This would have no pity upon one's fingers. Just to save time, what we'll do is come back on this and catch it in its lower half, and we'll see the end results as we have it at that point. What we're preparing to do now is to work in our gusset, which is in this flap area. The layout has been done right here. As you can see, to the back end is 2 inches here. There's 26-inch length, and in the upper edge is 5.5 inches from this point to this point here. Now what I've done is put the 5.5 all the way at the other end also. Then I picked the midpoint, got myself 1.5 inches, 1.5 inches, and I'm bringing that out into a sort of a triangular V shape. So what we'll do now, we'll cut that out and hem it up and place it into our flap area right near the post, which I'll show you when I get ready to put it in, so they'll know where that is. Now we've made our 2 gussets, which will fit up in the door section, flap, and give an idea as to where this will take place. We be in this area, whereby allowing the smoke flap to have an outward tilt. We'll attach this now to our front area and see how everything looks. We're now putting in the gusset in the smoke flap. And the trick to this is to leave the end free so that when we finish at the end, the stretch or the slack between the giving parts or shrinkage like will come out even, so we can always cut a little off. So it's good to allow maybe a couple inches there to make this work out for you. This is sewed on the inside seam side. In other words, this gusset's on the inside of the teepee, not on the outside. I'll take this almost up to the edge, get the seams all lined here. What I want to do is stop right short of the smoke tie point, and then I will take and double back and cut it off. What I'd like to point out now is when putting in the gusset, we allowed it to overlap out this end that much, inch and a half. After you fold back, see it's sort of an angle, so therefore it's sort of would be hard to put the measurements on it to allow for that. But just keep in mind, then what I've done is taken and cut it off and then I fold back. So it actually was about 3 inches sticking out here, and it gave me this angle that I wanted in here. It's just a nice and easy way to go get it in a hurry. Our next step will be to make a reverse of this, the tie tab, and reinforcing this entire area. This is 3 inches coming up from the bottom, and we'll take this all in and sew as I have similar to this in the reinforcement. In other words, another piece that would sit down on here. And after we get this reinforcement panel made, then we'll come back with some heavy canvas that we will call reinforcement strips to go right here to right here, so that the tuck and pull on this area will allow tearing stress to be eliminated. So we're just about to cover this for a day. We've been from sunrise now to sunset. The later part of the day has occurred, so you can pretty well think we've only stopped momentarily to take a few breaks in the day's meal of the heat. I'd say about an hour out of that. So we've got up to right now about 8 hours worth of good hard sewing has been put out, plus computations and figuring the pieces and things. But it's been really easy sewing. What I've attempted to demonstrate here is that with the piece that we had earlier, where the tie flap needed reinforcing, what I've done is I've actually laid the second piece of cloth down and took it to the edges underneath here by the dimensions which I had already put under here, and simply felt the seam through here and made a heavy tracing to follow to those points. Then I drew off my dimensions and left myself what I have here is for after it's folded in seam. So the idea that you can use sometime is to slip it up behind an object and sort of making a piece that would suffice for what you want without going through a lot of great deal of detail. It's about 18 inches across and appears to be about 7.5 inches high. That's allowing for seam now if you fold a half an inch in, and she should run about total about 16 inches from the top to the bottom. So, and that's with a, I believe it was about 4 inches top, yes. So now you have your reinforcement prepared, ready to go, and it's just a matter of hemming that off and zigzag sewing it on to make it supportive. Okay, so now we've hemmed around and taken up all our tidbits that we were working on earlier and completed those. So now we've stretched her back out on the ground here for a review of some of the things we've done. Here at the doorway, at the bottom half, I've made up a pattern to show the reinforcement and allowing for the ½ inch all the way around on your edges. And this will fit right in this section, and this is your piece of material rough cut, which will fit in here after I will hem around the edges and attach that. You'll have 2 holes here for your pegs for holding the bottom half. We got that to add. Then we need to catch our upper section above the door, and this will consist of our peg holes, which will be in this section. Now what we'll have is 2 sets, a left and a right, and the pegging stakes will have to feed so that when they overlap, the smaller ones are underneath, so that the big ones can have room enough to move, work through this hole, and out the second hole through the 4th hole. So one of these would be a pattern for what we call a left and a right. And this area here will be taking on reinforcement also, which we have drawn up a section of reinforcement panel which takes in the upper half. There'll be a left and a right in this. This is right beyond your smoke flap and will work its way down, as you see here underneath the material. Of course, we've already roughly cut it out. You have to keep in mind now that on one side of the teepee we'll be working with a right hand, and on the other end we'll be working with a left. So this is something you have to keep in mind because of the getting them make up 2 prior to it and find out that you end up with 2 the same. We had talked earlier about on this corner here there is a pocket, and this will be a pocket piece, and that will be folded and placed on the end. I've already done a section here so that one can see with the pocket already attached. This is where the pole will go in for the lift. Also, we've added the tab flap, which we had not had on the prior one. We've also reinforced this area with a piece of the reinforcement, so we're ready now to add the 6 sets of holes from the top of the door up. Also, we have reinforced the bottom of the door in this case, and over to a certain section we'll have 2 holes for this. There will also be too close together and too far apart. These measurements will be given all together later so that we can group for this particular size of lodge. So now you've accumulated some patterns to pieces, and you should have now a greater understanding of how we are laying it out and building it. Remember back earlier we had the pattern for the reinforcement lift hole pattern which fed in here. Well, since then we've made a section now for our ties, which now will sew on to right here, and then we'll have a strap which will sew onto that, and that'll complete that section. So now all we got to do is do a couple more reinforcement bars, hand sew the peg holes, and reinforce a couple items right in these 2 points, the stress points, with a little stripping of duck, and we'll be ready to assemble the material to the outer half here. Now what we have done, we have concentrated heavily on the touch-up and completion of particular items. We've added the ties, the loop, which is the rope coming from the smoker, will be coming to the ground. We've added this flap area on this. We've reinforced the tab in this area. We've put a reinforcement underneath in the back side of the smoke flap, and we've added our smoke pole support tabs, pockets, folded and attached those, and we've gone down on our tie pole and added a reinforcement square and our tie for that. We've also added in a nylon blocking strips to allow for the stress that will be when you push this pole up, that you don't rip the panel out. So we've done this now on both sides, a left and a right. And you got to keep in mind that when you got a left and a right, you get turned around at times and you'll end up with 2 rights or 2 lefts and have to tear the stitches out and redo it. But we've reinforced all these areas. Now comes the next good part, when we can add a piece of paneling now, going the full length outer edge all the way to the other end. We sew that on, add another one and another one, 3 strips, and we'll have the teepee ready to figure out our circle area around the outer perimeter. And the next step here will be to add the peg holes, and this will be done by hand and each eyelet sewed. So actually on the downhill slope of the teepee now. Okay, now we have rolled out our second sheeting, which we'll be nothing more than taking the opposite end at the far end here, cutting it across, come at this end, keeping it even, and hemming down the side here, and hem down this side. Leave enough on the outer edge here for our overlap, and we will be cutting this in a sort of a cut motion like that. And what we'll do, being that this is a different width of material that I was figuring on originally, was usually runs about 36, so actually our material would have quit here. We've been taking it. All right, now that we've taken each section as we explained before, and now I've tied the first section of the end to the longer section. Now we've gone and added 2 more since the last showing. Being the material's wider in this case, the dimensions will change as your perimeter changes. What we've done is gone to the, not to the center of the tie point, but just above the tie point to a specified where we pick up 13 feet to the lower edge here to a tie point, which is about a foot above tie point. And then we've hooked this to a big long tape, and we've pulled the tape to mark our spot on start, and we simply just walk our circumference around where we've already cut a couple places here to give you an idea. Right here being where the scissors are, where we'll start down and cut around to this corner here. Now if you get real good with this, you won't have all this extra material laying off to one side, and you can save that for other parts that will come later, one being for your tie points, which will now make this cut, and then we'll fold the far end to this end and cut the other matching edge as we fold it over. Now as you can see, we've taken and folded the 2 pieces over, and now cut off the excess to match the outer edge. That only leaves us now with a very small portion to be added here on the bottom, which we'll add next. And then we can start with our tie points. Now if you select to use marbles, then you need not to sew on tabs, but in my case I'm going to use tabs, so I will make 13 tabs that will be evenly spaced throughout the perimeter. Now let's see what it looks like when we open it up. Is it a teepee yet? Clean all that up now. We've now teepeed. All right. So here we go. We've now got it laid out and pulled our outer edges. And now we can see what our shapes have formed into that we used earlier. This is almost the finished module. Now we're ready to sew the bottom piece here at the ladder end and our tie points. Now that we have all our tabs, interlinking panels, and sections now sewed together, now we're going to add our ties. Now, as I said earlier, in the process, these ties will go onto to help stake it down. Some will want to use marble or rocks, and at this time you won't have to add this. But every 37 inches I will be adding a tie point. What I'll show now is how I do the tying patch. Pull down my corner an inch. Fold her back where I want it. Sometimes I just take and turn up to the end with a few stitches. Gives me a maneuvering point for pivoting off. And we carry it on down, and we finished with that end. And now we're ready to cut us off a little piece of tab work and take it from that. What we made is 13 of these tie-down tabs. All we'll do is pick the better of the, fold them over. It's 6.5 by 5.5 is the measurements, and we turned it down a ½ inch inside. Take and fold a triangle out of it. Maneuver again. Now what I've done is cut off a 16-inch piece of heavy belt for my roll. Had him up in here about an inch. Take it to the center. Leave it back. And then come up the other side. This completes our sewing tab. Okay, back to our layout piece. Now you can see where I've gone over 37 inches now and added our tie downs. This is now exceptional of where I've taken and sewed off the buttonholes, which I'll attempt to focus in here. All I have to do now is to take and cut these holes open going all the way up the strip here for our pegs. And we'll be ready next to come over here and select us some nice poles, and we'll show you how to tie off. Alright, this is the last minute reinforcement where we want to reinforce where we'll be doing our lift and push. This will take a lot of stress, so we want to make sure that it's got the enough of its service represented as our support. That gives us some pretty nice support.
This is on the inside.
What we've done now is brought out our canvas, laid down 3 poles, and we're going to lay it to where the bottom almost comes to the end, and we're going to select from this new pole a point somewhere on it whereby we can call this our pivot point. By no means will you find that this will always be until you establish a parameter around the skirt, which we'll show you later. But you may do this thing several times. Now this is an extremely long pole for what we're doing, but it is still small enough at shaft here that we can work from this. So this is really for a 20-foot teepee, and we're putting up a 16, so it does leave gives you an idea of the difference in physical size. So let's see if we can get our poles now constructed across so that we're ready to pull up and lift. Now that we had measured the bottom of our teepee to the tie tab, we marked 3 poles. These 3 poles being going to be our lift poles. And what we've done is taken and tied those off into the points here. And this will be the north end pole. So when we pick this up, set it upright, we'll move that pole around. And that will fall in between these 2 poles, making it the door pole. So now we'll proceed to pitch this up, being it's only on 1-man operation. Somebody has to pull and somebody has to film. Now we've lifted the 3 poles after tying them. And now we're ready to put our poles against this format. And we will start with 4 poles here. Then we'll go on the other side. Put 4 poles there. And then we'll come here, put 1 here and 2 there. Then we'll lay our lift pole down, pull up. As you see here now, we have the tripod. Picked it where we thought our point would be. And now what we'll do, we'll take 3 poles, 1, 2, 3 here. Go on the other side and put 1, 2, 3 there. Then come on this side and put 1 here and 2 here. Our lift pole will be number 4 in this case. As we had described before, we've put up now a 3, our 3, our 2, and our 1. And now we're ready to take the rope, go outside, and circle 4 times, bring her back to the center, pull each time when you go around, snuggle that up. We've selected another pole, which we will tie off for the first time, our lodge. This is the lift pole. And this will center in here and sit between this point here. So let's see how she looks. Well, it's about time, I guess you would say, close to celebration. This is the lodge. There are wrinkles, and there's ties, and there's buckles, and there's a lot of things that we will have to check out and skirt down. Our tie points, one thing is we won't have such tall poles, but we've tied it down. It seems to address around pretty nicely for its first maiden time up, and a little smaller pole would definitely be in order here. Let's see what's all it's about inside. Alright, we're in a stand-up mode. Now, the next thing we'll be doing will be concentrating on the area in here whereby we'll have rope run from these points and a dew cloth that will come down to the ground and go all the way around to the opening of the teepee. Not bad, not bad. Did we do a good job, guys, gals? First time up. almost time for a celebration. Nylon doesn't seem to be too bad either. We got one little place now we're going to add to. We're going to put a tie from here to here, mark it off now, so that we can put a bow to snug these 2 points together before we begin our lacing. Well, next is we'll take it down, put it up several times till we can get rid of these bags and sags here. This is due to the point where we are tied right there at this point. And if this tie, it can be either moved up or set down. But our perimeter now, we pretty well feel we're skirted pretty good around the edges. Also point out that my little tie points, see how they're stressing? They stress out. Well, that's why I sort of like that. And I have a bigger area to pull from than a little small rock area with a rope tied around it. Whew. Yes, very warm day. There's a cool breeze coming through the opening, and it really feels good inside. So next is to make us up a door, which we will do, and let this set a little bit. We'll come back to it later. Okay, now we've removed the cover from around the teepee, and now each pole is positioned as the lodge set in its very nice position with the wrinkle free, and the comb was well laid out. We don't move any of the poles. Now we want to sort of lay out for what we call a rough liner. What we've done, we've taken some brown wrapping paper or meat packing paper, and we come between two of our poles working all the way around, and we will take now and cut right here, and we'll notice that when you cut the long sheet of paper, you can take and fold that angle over, and it'll come out on the other end here already. So each time you make this angle, when you flip it over, it comes another piece that's right angle. So that's telling you that you're on your right way. Usually you allow a tabbed piece about 6 inches to fold under, 6 to 8 inches. So I didn't dress this all the way to the ground. The main thing is to bring up the idea. What I would do probably would cut it right here for about 8 inches and bend it under all the way across, then bring that down to the foot. Alright, and then this will be from this point to up here would be like 6 feet because of our 3-foot pieces of material. And that allows us to have a seam across here, and when we get through now, this pattern that we take, we'll number these and from where they come, and we'll start out with the front portion, and we'll do 3 panels up here, and then we'll come and do 4 here and then 5 on the other side. Now some call them a little different, but I can go 4 or I can go 6 and 4, but the main thing is to set up my pattern, get that custom blend here. You can do this from the inside as well as from out. I did this from the outside for the benefit of being able to run the camera. And once we get these all laid out in our section, 6 foot all the way around and numbered, we'll put those pieces together, and then we'll take it and make a customized fit liner. And this will benefit later when we get ready to put up the lodge poles, that you can take and put up your poles and then bring your liner and lay it on the ground, and the process, you will already have your poles lined up by pulling each one of these skirts and tying them at the bottom so you can move it in or out, or however it may be. So this is going to play a vital part. Now customarily, I'm sure that in the earlier days that they did do something similar to this.
But I found this works out to be almost like a glove inside. You've got the fit that you want and need. And what I've done is laid out already made dew cloth to give the idea to where our pattern that we cut prior laid. The first section being right here at the bottom. Then we cut off another section we showed earlier. This is the top. Notice how it would begin to snuggle and form as we come around. And as we cut these sheets, we'll end up with each one of these squares. Now, we will come up with some dimensions fairly even between these. Even though our pole might have a wider dimension here than is under this cloth, what we'll do, we'll go back after we get all our angles, and we'll sort of divide these sheets up so that our patterns or our material widths will fall within those. So this will make it a lot easier to put together, but the idea is you've got to get to form the shape of the back cover and the side covers, this being the back, so that we can have something to start our contour to work from. Now we'll try to cut out the rest of these paper sections and make ourselves a liner. Earlier I had shown on the mock-up of this paper when it was between the two poles. And what I've done is taken and put down all the sheets from the largest piece, which being this piece, and then as they progress in smaller pieces within this on one piece of paper. So then I took each and placed it upon the drawing that I have with their measurements, so that I could use one drawing or piece of butcher paper to lay out all those pieces which I have. Now that I've compiled the pieces all together, each one in its pattern to its tie point, according on the length of the material, this being about 43 inches instead of 36, you'd have a seam here, and it would be half between the two, but according on the material, you'll have to work around, but your pattern, the way you lay it out, helps. With our layout inside, we have now that we've taken our pattern and carefully numbered each piece of paper as we laid it over our master sheet, we're able to cut out each piece as it progresses around the lodge and to its tie points and its bottom where they tie on to. And as you notice that we have material that was longer than 36, so you have to work around that, and it's easier to do with one piece of pattern out of your paper than it is to try to figure out what angle you cut across to get this 42-inch piece in here. So by making the pattern, it's a lot easier. Now we'll step inside the lodge. We see that our rope tie and how it dresses down on each and skirts out 8 inches at the bottom from the tie. This is 36, two pieces of 36 inch. So we've got 6 feet, and we've tied behind these 8 feet from the floor tie points, which makes a very nice skirt. So we're coming right along with this. So the lodge is shaping up the way we sort of want it to at this point.
Now with your pattern laid long ways, which I've taken a wider piece of material now where I can take and run one piece without sewing it in the middle. But still, each time I lay it down and then I deduct at the top what I need for my angles. So there in this row is already 5, and I got 4 more to go in this end, and that'll complete the layout for the gathering of our dew cloth.
Now we've laid out our patterns and have cut each piece in progression as it would go around from one lodge pole to the other. Hopefully you will notice that the distance do not stay the same. Therefore, this will make it easier when you get ready to put up this particular lodge because of its pattern, tailor fitted each panel to match the different poles for their spacing, so that when you go now to put up the lodge, when you put the inner liner down on the ground and tie to each one of the poles, you'll already be structuring it.
about a foot down, just like you would. You don't have to be what's called super tight, like on wrestling. back even between the two. Right dead center and back. That would be it. Probably have to pull the lift pole back some.
Yeah, that's true. I'm gonna go help them register.
Alright, we got
I'm back there somewhere. I'm gonna go help them with the big registration thing.
alrighty.
Let you guys get some stuff done.
Runs it all the way up.
We'll come back by that display sign, I'll show you that friend.
Okay.
Or if not, I'll show you some other time today.
Okay. I definitely want to see it. Well, let's see. 6 inches down. Now, why I didn't get the round, I don't know. I thought I had gotten a piece of round.
It does look round.
But it's
Neat.
not. It's squared. This isn't as round as it gets, is it, OL?
It's small.
If you hear it, look,
This is what I've been saying.